It's 11 p.m. You're highlighting the same paragraph for the third time. You read, you mark, you watch a tutorial and nod along, feeling certain you're making progress. Then Tuesday rolls around. Someone asks you a simple question about the material, or you sit down to execute the task yourself, and your mind is a complete blank wall. The glitch causing this is a well-documented psychological trap called the fluency illusion. When your brain scans familiar text or watches a smooth demonstration a second time, it mistakes that visual familiarity for actual comprehension. You think you've learned it, but you're only recognizing it. The smoother the study process feels, the higher your confidence spikes, and the less actual work your brain is doing to store the information. We're trained to treat learning as a problem of intake. We picture our minds as a container, and we try to pour information into it by rereading and rewatching. That model gets the biology completely backwards. Durable memory doesn't come from letting data wash over you. Learning is active construction. You build the memory through the physical effort of reaching for the information and wrestling it into shape. If you want to fix a failing memory, pouring in more water isn't going to help. You have to change the job assignment you give your brain before you even start reading. In a quiet cognitive science lab, researchers led by John Nestajoyko handed two groups of students the exact same reading passage. Both groups were given the exact same amount of time to study it. There was only one variable. Before they started, the second group was told a single sentence. After this, you're going to teach the material to another student. Everyone ended up taking a standard test. No one actually had to stand up and teach. Yet the group that expected to teach recalled noticeably more of the text. Their answers were cleaner, and they held on to the heavy, load-bearing ideas far longer. Waiting to absorb is a lazy state. You passively wait for the important parts to jump out. But the moment you read to explain, you launch a search mission. You start scanning for the spine of the idea and bracing for the obvious questions a confused person would ask. The mere expectation of facing another human being shifts the brain's focus from surface scanning to structural organization. Cognitive scientists point out that preparing to teach forces your brain to execute three mandatory moves. First, you select. Out of a massive text, you filter the noise and choose what actually matters, because you cannot teach every detail. Second, you organize. You arrange isolated facts into a structured, logical path. Third, you integrate. You must anchor this new logical path to familiar concepts so the student can actually grasp it. Select, organize, integrate. Preparing to teach forces your brain to run this exact engine, turning temporary data into permanent architectural memory. This effect extends far outside the laboratory. Researchers built a computer program called Betty's Brain, asking middle schoolers to teach complex science concepts to a blank slate digital cartoon character named Betty. The kids in charge of teaching drastically improved their behavior. They worked harder, carefully monitored their own logic, and showed a massive willingness to go back and fix their own errors. They were leaning on a psychological trick known as the echo buffer. When an answer was wrong, the student could think, "Betty messed up," instead of internalizing the failure as, "I am stupid." A broad analysis by a researcher named Kobayashi added a final multiplier to this. While simply preparing to teach gives a solid boost, interactive teaching, where a student or avatar gets things wrong and asks why, doubles the retention by destroying your ability to hide behind memorized phrases. Teaching provides a rare combination. It gives you a compelling reason to care about the material and an emotional safety net that makes it safe to fail and correct your course. This changes how we should approach our study routines. The output is the input. The act of explaining the material is the very act of studying it. You can trigger this tonight with a simple pre-frame. Before you open a book or hit play on a lecture, whisper one sentence to yourself. I have to explain this to someone tonight. Then, after a chunk of material, close the source and explain it out loud. Doing it silently in your head is a trap. Inner monologue lets you cheat with vague, half-formed thoughts. But out loud, the gaps become obvious. When you hit a stutter or lose your train of thought, you've identified a hole in your logic. That specific moment of friction tells you exactly which paragraph to go back and read again. You don't even need a real student to do this. Use a stand-in. Teach a rubber duck, explain to an empty chair, or text a friend. By forcing yourself through the friction of an out-loud explanation, you purposefully expose your weak joints now, well before the actual test does. We tend to view teaching as a privilege. We assume it's a role you only step into after you have mastered a subject. The science suggests the exact opposite. Stepping into the teacher's chair is the primary mechanism for getting good at something in the first place. Pick one thing you are trying to learn right now that you've only ever passively consumed. Tonight, close the book, teach it to an empty room, and watch exactly where your understanding falls apart.